Hey guys, this is Gaijin Hunter. In this video, which is going to be more of an audio thing than a video thing, so you don't actually have to watch this, you can just put this on in the background and listen. I wanted to go over all the different quality of life improvements that we know of in Monster Hunter World as of today. There are quite a bit, and these are things that take mechanics or systems that have already existed in Monster Hunter and modernize them to make them much more easier so you can focus more on the hunting action and enjoy the game more. Okay, the first area I think category we can talk about is the actual environment in which you play the game, or the map. So the big one, which everyone knows by now, is that there are no loading between areas. Everything is completely seamless. Now they've definitely taken this into consideration. They're not just recycling old maps, they've created brand new worlds for all the hunts so far. And all the areas seem to have a very distinct landmark piece, whether it's the giant tree in the ancient forest, the huge ant hill looming in the distance, in the Wildspire Waste, and stuff like that. So that's going to help you sort of gauge where you are in a map during a quest, and that's also going to make everything feel a lot more cohesive and connected. The second nice quality of life change that they've done with the maps is there are now multiple base camps. Now for those of you who are not that familiar with Monster Hunter, usually when you go into a quest there is one area called the base camp. This is where you go to sleep to sort of get like a free heal for your potions, and this is also where you get sent back to if you die during a hunt. So with multiple base camps, this makes it a lot more easier to travel in between them, and there indeed is a fast travel system. So if you want to go from one end of that huge map to the other, all you got to do now is explore and find another base camp, and then you can use it as a quick travel point. It definitely opens up more for, I'd say, open exploration, and also just makes things a lot more convenient, especially once we start going into the changes that they've done to the base camps themselves. Which brings me to point 3. You can now cook and eat during quests. Now normally you had to eat before you go on a quest, and a meal basically just gives you some buffs. Whether it's a buff that gives you increased defense or increased attack power or special skills and stuff like that. You can now, if you forget to eat or if you die, you can go and cook right there and eat. That is great, especially for quests I think with multiple monsters. You're going to want to eat for different skills and get the slight advantage. Another thing that you can do at the base camp is to change your armor and your weapons, which is huge. This completely changes how the series have always acted. You've always been stuck, you go into a quest with one weapon and one armor and that's it. Let's say midway you like, yeah, I'd rather use a bow. Well, you couldn't do that, but now you can. Not only does this open up the area so that people can actually start using more than one weapon, it also makes it easier so if you have a multiple monster quest and you're fighting one, say using the charge blade, but then you run into another monster and you really wish you had the insect glaive, you can go right back, fast travel to a base camp, change into your insect glaive and go right back out there. You can also do the same to your Palico's armor and weapons, so this is a huge change. So having the multiple base camps and the fast travel means that much more. And finally, the tracking bugs. I know this is technically a new system, but up until now in Monster Hunter, you had to paint a monster with a paintball of all things, only to find it, right? And if you lost it, it became very hard and you can end up wasting 2 to 3 minutes running around a map looking for your monster. Well, now if you actually go and take the time to track it, the bugs will always be there during the quest and you'll always know where to find the monster. So I definitely consider this a wonderful quality of life change. Okay, the next category I'm just going to call system mechanics. So this is a little bit of a grab bag of some random cool things, but definitely nice. First up, I covered this in one of my videos just recently, is the in-game Wikipedia. So this is kind of like an in-game encyclopedia that as you scout and you track monsters and you capture them, the game will unlock more and more information. It's not just stuff like explanations about them and cool icons, but there's also information about like what they're weak to, which each body part, which element they're weak to, how weak they are to it, and you can even unlock stuff like what items you can get for killing that monster. So this is definitely not going to be the end all for wikis because it only has stuff like it's very weak or not very weak. It's not like an exact percentage. So I think the hardcore gamers will go online where people who have bought in the guides or whatever are going to list it out on the website. But for the average gamer, the in-game wiki I think is going to solve a lot of issues where they just want to know how the heck do I get this item. They look on it and they go, oh, you can only get this from breaking the head of this monster. Okay, well then I need to break the head. So this is going to definitely, I think, improve the average quality of hunter online, which is going to be really important because this is going to have a global base of hunters. There's going to be a lot of people to play with. Speaking of multiplayer, the second point is the drop in and out multiplayer. This is awesome. So let's say up until now, if you started a quest, you can have up to 1 to 4 players. Let's say you dropped out, like someone fell off in the middle and you're stuck now with 3 hunters. Well, you can now open the door and let a 4th hunter, or perhaps maybe the same hunter that fell out, they can come and go right back in. That is really cool. Now, we haven't seen a lot of screen details on how this works, but they keep pressing that this is going to be a big feature and it's going to be very easy to do. And the reason why drop in and drop out multiplayer is so cool is the third point, which is there is no longer a difference between the offline single player quest and the online multiplayer quest. For a lot of you, what this really means is that you can play through story mode with your friends, which a lot of people have been wanting to do. Now, will this get rid of the urgent system, so to say, where everyone has to do a key quest for each player that's in the room? I don't know. My guess is probably not. But they're definitely pushing this to be a multiplayer experience in the idea that there is no single player quest. There are some differences. Obviously, if you go in as a single player, you'll have a lot more rich actions with your palico, whereas you don't get your palico if you're playing in multiplayer quests with other players. Because there's no distinguishing them, I think it's just going to make it a lot easier to go on quests with people, and especially if you're stuck. The fourth option, and this is really sort of just jumping way out there, is the language option. So we've always only had Monster Hunter gibberish, which is like the like the way that they talk. It's not actually Monster Hunter language like they have in Monster Hunter Stories. This is just gibberish. But for a lot of us veterans, or I don't know if I'd call myself a veteran, but for a lot of us, it really is nostalgic, and that's what we like. But for new players who want them to actually be speaking their language, let's say English, there will be obviously that language now so that you can hear and understand what people are saying, which I'm actually going to have that on. As nostalgic as I might be with the gibberish, I actually really like the idea that I understand what they're saying, and I think it's going to allow me to focus more on the game. This fifth point is a new one that I just recently caught out of the corner of my eye with some of their demos that they were doing, but you know how they have in modern games like the play of the game, right? Like at the end of the hunt, you get to see who did the best. Well, in Monster Hunter, obviously, and the devs know this, and this means a lot to me, that they know that just dealing damage is not all there is to hunting. There's players who can trap a monster well, or can heal their teammates, and stuff like that. So they've created a huge list of different titles that you can earn at the end of a hunt, and at the end of the hunt, you'll see which titles every other hunter earns. So you can go, oh wow, that guy A. Ivanko, he healed everybody, like he's heal master. That's awesome. And then, it's just a way that you can find out the value of each of the hunters in your team. And I think this is going to create for a more positive and a lot more interesting online environment. And finally, we now have a 16-person hub town, which is crazy. I played the Chinese Monster Hunter Online, and I could tell you having a lot of people in your hub town is really nice, because up until now you only had 4 hunters. So you go together into a team, you go to a quest, and that's it. Well, what if people want to do different quests? You have to literally say, okay, bye, and create like a new lobby. But now you'll have 16 people, so this allows you to intermingle with people a little bit more, to have more than 4 friends together. That'll be really fun. I think this is going to be especially interesting for Twitch players, because a Twitch streamer is not going to be able to make a room and say, hey guys, here's my room, I can have up to 16 of you in here, you guys can hunt together as you're waiting, and then we can rotate and you can hunt with me on stream. That's awesome. Okay, let's jump in a little bit more detailed and let's talk about the in-quest actions you can do. From the very first time they showed us gameplay, the first thing that stood out was the fast gathering. So instead of just standing there in place and gathering items, you now can gather them as you run through, let's say, bushes and stuff like that. That's obviously going to encourage hunters to gather more items, to combine more items, and to get a little bit more involved in understanding how the whole crafting system works. It's also going to make it a lot easier when you need like random bugs and stuff like that for crafting armor. Another huge difference, of course, is the potion and other items. You no longer stop to use them. So up until now, you would stop, you'd drink a potion and do sort of like a Superman guts pose. And then the whole idea was that that motion took a certain period of time, and you wanted to make sure that you did it so that you don't get hit. Now, there was gameplay reasons for that, and of course it made a lot of sense up until now, but now that we have seamless areas, it's a lot harder to just run out of the map and do something. So they've added obviously the cover system where you can hide inside bushes from certain monsters, but you can now drink a potion as you're walking. Now, of course, this means that you will use stamina as you're drinking, but it is kind of nice that you can cancel out of it. So if you're in the middle of drinking like a high grade potion and you cancel out of the middle of it, you still gained like half the life of that potion because you were drinking it. Very nice change. Another cool feature is obviously these maps are wonderfully huge and you're going to be wanting to run around, explore, and gather items. But if there's no monster around, then why should you have to be at the mercy of the stamina system? So the stamina bar pretty much goes away if there's no monster that has found you, so to say, which allows you to explore, run, and even catch up to monsters faster and easier than you've ever been able to. And this next point, I don't know if it is really a quality of life or just a system change that's really cool, but up until now, in order to gather bugs and stuff like that, you had to bring in a special item, you had to find this special spot, literally stand there and just press the A button. It was pretty boring, it was restrictive, so now they're actually adding gameplay to it. So you can aim and shoot a bug net to capture monsters. Not only does this make the game a heck of a lot more fun, but it also makes it a little bit easier because you have these small little monsters that are all over the map, right? And so instead of just having set spots where you just go there and press A, you can now, anytime you see a small bug or whatever, you can just shoot the net and capture it right there on the spot. And speaking about gathering, you can now fish anywhere there's water. Up until now, obviously, there's been fishing spots. Even if you're next to water, if it wasn't a fishing spot, you never got a prompt. Now you can throw in and cast your lure and fish anywhere you want. Now, of course, there will be areas where you can visually see fish, and in those areas, you'll have a higher rate of catching fish, but being able to fish anywhere is pretty cool. Then finally, everybody's hated egg delivery quest. It doesn't seem like they're getting rid of them because it is a staple for the series to go into a monster's nest, grab their egg, and deliver it all the way back to a base camp. But they have improved it greatly where you can now roll and run with an egg in your hand without the fear of it breaking. So they're actually going to fix it so that egg delivery quests are probably going to be fun instead of just incredibly frustrating. So, great changes across the board here. Okay, and jumping directly into combat and things that you can do as you're hunting, you can now see your remaining sharpness. Up until now, let's say you had a sharpness, you could see like on the sharpness bar how long it is, and you can sort of gauge how many times you can hit a monster before it decreases. And of course, lower sharpness means less damage. Now you can visually see it on the actual screen, so you're not going to be surprised all of a sudden if you run out of sharpness. This will also tell you, like if you're running after a monster, hey, I should probably sharpen up now. Okay, and some of you are going to want this off, some of you on, but they do have the ability now to show damage numbers. One of the more popular requests for my tutorial vids is to show people the motion value, which is basically saying how powerful each individual attack is on paper. But now we'll be able to actually see it, which I think is great. I think it's going to do a much better job at training people to become better hunters because the same attack done at different parts of the body of the same monster will do vastly different damage. And they've also added in color coding. So let's say you do an attack that does a lot of damage because it's a weak spot, it'll have one color to the numbers, and if you don't do a lot of damage, it'll be smaller and have a different color. So they're making all these types of small changes here to help communicate to players not only how much damage they did, but was it good damage or weak damage, which is a very important distinction. Now again, you can turn this off if you just want the immersion or if you already know the monsters. It's not a big deal, but having it on I think is going to help out a lot of people. Next up is the mantles. Now this is more of a new feature than it is a quality of life change, but there's always been a few different skills that are very helpful, but not a lot of people use because you would actually have to put it on your armor skills and it was just a pain in the butt. So now they're taking some of those armor skills that were hard to activate and they're just giving them into a single item called a mantle that you can put on and off, and it affects you for a duration of time. Some of these are activating skills like Challenger, Rocksteady, making it easier for you to hide, having an air glider so you can go up to high places easier. Even there's one that has healing smoke, which will allow you to put sort of like a smoke up that will heal you and your fellow comrades throughout a duration of time. And the next one, it seems second nature to us now because we've been exposed to it long enough, but this is huge, but you can see what moves you can do next on the upper right hand of the screen, sort of like a training mode in a fighting game. Now, most of my tutorial vids up until now have always focused upon what moves can you do and in what order. Well, this is going to solve a lot of that for a lot of you guys. You're going to be able to look at it and go, hey, what's that move? I didn't know I can do that after that. And I think this will also, again, improves the communication to people because the game never had a very good tutorial on how to use a weapon. So being able to see the prompts is going to allow people to experiment and figure things out. And finally, another change I want to sort of classify under combat is natural traps and items in the environment. So instead of having to always bring items to trap a monster, you now have vines, you have paralysis frogs, you got all these other things that are organic and part of the maps that you can now use to trap the monster. This is going to be really great for obviously online if you want to create huge opportunities to do damage. But just in general, I think this is going to take down the focus of having to bring in a whole wide variety of items and make you more focused on being able to use the environment more, which is, I mean, if you think about it, is making you a better hunter. Okay, now we have armor changes. Obviously, armors and weapons is the main loop of Monster Hunter. You go in, you fight a monster, you get some materials, you do it over and over again till you get some rare materials, and then you make armor crafted out of that monster's body parts. And of course, that armor carries on the characteristics and the skills of the monster that you slayed, so you're almost always wearing your trophy. So any changes to this is not only a very sensitive area, but also a very good opportunity to make the game better, and I really love what they're doing. The first one they're doing, and this, I can't believe they didn't do this sooner, is you can now use the same armor for all 14 weapons. Now if you're new to the series, that sounds like, well, duh, but up until now there's been a classification called Blade Master and Gunner. Gunner was like the bow and the bow guns, and Blade Master was everything else. Up until now, you actually had to buy a separate piece of armor of the same armor you already have if you wanted to, let's say, switch over to a gunner weapon. So now they've gotten rid of that completely, so if you make an armor, you can use it for both. So this is going to encourage a lot more people to try out Gunner, because Blade Master, of course, is by far the most popular. And then they just balanced it. So Blade Master, if you're using a Blade Master weapon, you'll take reduced physical damage, and if you're a gunner, you'll be taking a reduced elemental damage. So it's a very smart and easy fix, and this is going to make things a lot easier. Of course, because like I said earlier, you can change your weapon at base camps now. So if you just want to go from a charged blade into a bow, you can totally do that and not have to worry about changing your armor. And speaking about armor, there's no more negative armor skills. Every single piece of armor also gives you something. Up until now, each armor piece gave you points towards a certain skill, and it was the combination of armor pieces that activated skills to do. So there was kind of like an art in sort of like how to mix one monster's head from the torso of another one, combine that with a charm, and now you can have these skills. Well, now you can mix and match all you want, because every single piece of armor is going to give a different piece of skill. What they've done now is they've changed into a level system. So let's say I have fire resistance. My arm, let's say, might give me fire resistance level 1. If I have on a headpiece, it'll turn into level 2 and stuff like that. This, of course, will help get rid of like the hunters that join your room and they don't have any armor skills at all, because they're trying to finish some set and they just are missing a piece or something. Now, you know, it's not like all or none. There's actually in between stages now as you craft your favorite set. And for crafting your favorite set, a lot of us care about, I think, the visual aesthetic. So you can now try on armor before you buy it. Again, this sounds like a no-brainer for, I think, a lot of Western games have been doing this for a while, but Monster Hunter hasn't. So being able to try on and combine different armor pieces is not only going to make it a lot more easier for people like myself or other YouTubers to go on and show you off some visually appealing sets, because we can try on the combinations, show you it, and talk about it online without having to actually buy the armor. That's going to be pretty nice. It's also good because, you know, you'll be able to simulate and see what skills you get overall, and I think it's just a great system. And speaking about armor that you want to buy, you can now record armor or weapons on your wish list. The wish list will make it easier for you to ever just pop it up and see which materials you still need to make them. It also gives you some nice prompts and stuff like that once you've completed the item list in order to make it. So no more keep running back to the smith saying, okay, I've hunted this monster, do I have enough parts yet? Well, you can now go onto your wish list and see for sure. So this is going to make hunting a lot less stressful. And speaking about aesthetic, they have such a robust character creation system that it would be a total waste if you couldn't see your hunter's face. So they do now add the ability to hide the headpiece. Up until now, we had to sort of use the earrings, which is just an item that doesn't really give you any skill pieces, but allows you to see your hunter's face. Now you can just decide not to show your headpiece. So if you have a really great armor, you don't have to sacrifice its skills just so you can visually see your beautiful hunter. Okay, next up is visual armor. So we don't have a whole lot of details how this works, but we do know from that pre-order sort of early like purchase bonus one that they do have a type of visual armor. What that means is that you can have the abilities of your current armor set, but the visual of another armor set. I hope they open this up so that it's a lot more free than just pre-order bonuses, and you can actually do this with other armors in the game, but we'll have to wait and see. But either way, it looks like they're taking the idea of transmog without breaking the game universe, which is really great. And finally, for the armor changes, I have on here upgradable charms. So up until now, to sort of balance your skills, there's been an item called a charm that you can find. Up until now, you've been at the mercy of the RNG, or the desire sensor, and if you didn't get the charm you want, or you got the charm and it wasn't that powerful, you were kind of stuck, and you had to go and keep farming until you found the right one. Well, now charms are going to act sort of like armor pieces, so once you have a charm, you'll be able to upgrade it at the smithy and make it more powerful. So this is going to make a lot more people, I think, look into charms, and again, just help, I think, in general, teach people how to have better sets. So I definitely like this system change. And finally, I have 3 ones which I filed under weapon changes, which are just some really cool things. The first one is you can now see weapon trees at the blacksmith, at the smithy. So you can actually say, okay, this sword, what type of weapon trees can it go into? And there's different display options as well, so you can see the attack power, the sharpness, all sorts of stuff. And of course, one thing that always sucks is you go down one weapon tree only to realize you're stuck, and if you could only go back, you would have chose a different tree. Well, now you can do that. You can go and reverse your weapon upgrades from one point in the tree to another point, not every point, just like I think like the major branch points. And the coolest thing is when you reverse your weapon upgrade down, like sort of downgrade it, you get those materials back. That's kind of cool. Imagine if you're playing 2 different weapons, let's say a lance and a greatsword, and you upgrade the greatsword and you use it and you're like, but I really want to be using the other weapon. You can now downgrade that weapon and have those materials available to upgrade your other weapon. So I think the idea of reversing is really cool. I hope it's not too expensive at the smithy to do, but either way, that is a huge quality of life improvement. And finally, and I should have put this under combat because it really is combat, but I love it so much I wanted to end on it, which is the new training area to practice weapons. I covered this in my last video from Monster Hunter World, but basically there's a training area with even the damage display on that you can put on, and you can really learn every single weapon. And of course this is great because we're just trying to encourage people to use more weapons, not only because they can change weapons at base camp, but because I think Monster Hunter at the base of it, every weapon feels like a brand new game. They're really distinct and they're very interesting, so having a training area to practice weapons is going to help people learn the weapons better and sort of find out which ones they like more than others. So I think it's an awesome change for quality of life than having to go buy a weapon, go on a quest, get your butt kicked, and then say, you know what, I don't know this weapon, and stuff like that. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's just been a lot of me talking, but I think some of these points are really cool. There may be a few in here that you didn't know, and I'm sure there's a few that I missed. So if I missed a quality of life improvement, please leave it down in the comments below. A lot of people read them. I read all the comments all the time, even if I don't reply. And I think this is going to be a great discussion place for us to talk about all the cool changes. I also want to give a shout out of love to my Discord, which I have a link for in the description below. It's open to anybody who wants to join. We've got a lot of great hunters there who are interested in a lot of very similar games and different topics, and we have great conversation. So I put sort of my list up there and got some help on trying to figure out what I may have missed. So go ahead and join the Discord if you haven't already. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, I'm sure we have some news coming up in the next month or so for Monster Hunter World because we're getting closer to release. And I cannot wait to see what we find out. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit like. I apologize I didn't have video to go with all these points, but I just wanted to make one where I can talk over and over again without looping some B-roll that either wasn't related or was too boring. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Can't wait for our next news drop, and until next time, happy hunting.